It's summertime. Can the web help you land a spot on the beach? We'll take a dip in the water and find out.
Then, what happened to Go 90? The hundreds of millions of dollars Verizon's put down the drain, and you've never heard of it.
And finally, can the siren song of Hollywood lure tech? Turns out it certainly can.
I'm Gene DeRose.
And I'm Steve Rosenbaum, and this is Future Forward. Let's launch. Hey, Gene.
Hey, Steve. How you doing?
Dude, you have a little bit of a tan. You have a little bit of a summer tan.
Yeah, I spent an afternoon at a lake in New Jersey, and if I don't completely cover my dome, it reflects everywhere.
Well, I think it looks very healthy. All right, before we get into our three topics, we've got a lot to cover, but I know we've got loving and hating, and it occurred to me that we call it loving and hating, and we generally do the loving part first, right? So
Yes.
let's what are we loving this week?
Yeah, and you're noting it because I sent you the note in advance, and because of the nature of this, I just have to hate first because it sets up the love. It sets up the love that much better. So on the subject of summer and summer school and things like that, I'm talking about programming and coding education for children, and I am hating the sorry state of the U.S. public education system. And really, if you want to zero in on it, it's the lack of core curriculum requirements around coding. It's just an embarrassment. And there's sort of, try to reduce it to two or three things because we could go on forever. One, in this day and age when we have math requirements that are extremely systematic, the fact that you can't fit in where everyone has to take it, a basic coding instead of trig or three versions of geometry or calculus over and over again, that's the first thing. The second thing is if it's thought about, it's offered as a kind of an alternative in high schools, and that's not really the way to do it. You know, kids all the way down to middle school are really capable and eager, and if they're not, it's because they're not exposed to it. The third thing is the dumbed down version of it. It turns out when they do things, it's really basic and simple, and this just needs to be rescued. I don't know what to do, but this is a terrible, terrible travesty and a waste of time. So I'm not going to disagree with your hating because hating is a legitimate emotion, but I am going to ask kind of a question.
If I handed you the keys to your kid's school and said, okay, build a program, would you teach Ruby? Would you teach C++? Like, it's changing so fast. When you say coding, what would you teach?
Well, I think you're right. You're right. Well, I think you have to start out with a basic approach to what programming, line by line instructions and loops and, the basic philosophies. And what's amazing that, if you have kids young enough that you realize is out there now are kind of object and visual oriented programming languages, quote unquote, like Scratch. That, at a basic level, you start out with that and you understand enough. From there, I agree. I'm not enough of a coder myself to tackle the challenge of how you do it. And the lack of teachers and how to manage it is a big deal. But I really think something needs to be done here because it's just a gap, and it needs to be a requirement at some point.
So which brings us to your love.
Yeah.
What are you loving this week?
So what I'm loving, because I have to match these thematically, is what you can do to substitute. And I'm going to talk about something that's extremely regional, so it's not a great example that everyone will know about, but I guarantee there's something like this in most tri-state areas and, urban areas and their suburbs. It's called Digital Art Experience, VDAE.com. And what this is it's a year-round set of classes and tutoring, and they'll even do birthday parties for you that's built around real coding. They do have things like Minecraft class and 3D printing, and but a lot of it is level 1, level 2 Python. Learning how to code and program video games, learning how to write mods for Minecraft, things that kids are really into up to a point, and it's just nice. And what I like is that it's structured in a very easy way that doesn't feel intimidating to a parent, and uses teenage and college and just out of college age kids as instructors. So, it's not a perfect thing, but it's something out there, and you can pay a few $100s and send your kid to a 6-week program once a week, 2 hours after school.
So, actually, but this is it's actually a terrific transition to our summer episode.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of things have changed in the way information is gathered and shared. And I thought we've talked about Airbnb in the past. Today we're going to talk about both Airbnb and also all of the various rental vacation home places. But I guess I just wanted to start by asking, I know you've used Airbnb as a rental, but have you ever put a room on Airbnb? Have you ever been a user of that platform?
No, I haven't, and I've been close to some people that have, and I've debated things at different times. I'm intrigued by that whole idea of it, but I think that it needs to be made a little more user-friendly for the average person, because what you see is people that decide to do it as a kind of avocation or second income versus, hey, we're going away for a month to Europe, why not make our place available? That feels like a big, scary step to people, I think, which maybe is an inseparable barrier.
So let's talk about VRBO. So VRBO is interesting on a number of levels. Yes. It turns out it's owned by a company called HomeAway, which I did not know. Mm-hmm. And it is specifically vacation rentals. And I don't know that I've actually ever ended up pulling the trigger on anything, but I've been on it a bunch of times looking for, I guess we ended up at maybe, hotels on the beach rather than houses. But, the finding the perfect beach house is hard. And my guess is if you own a beach house, finding a perfect tenant is equally hard, right?
Yeah, and I think there are historical backdrop issues that I think partly are why we're seeing it in a place like that. So if you're in the New York area, the Hamptons and Long Island, and the idea of shares and summer shares, even up to adult level and rentals, half of that has always been officially illegal, but nobody minds. And the second is all this kind of time sharing and home switching, which used to be a kind of a non-digital thing that's been out there, forever. I don't know I would guess that unless you're made to be exclusive, why wouldn't you as a renter put your place up on Airbnb as well as some of these other places? But I'm not really sure how it works, because as a user, I still would my first instinct would be to look for a beach house on Airbnb, but maybe it's a specialized market where these guys can do well.
Well, I think part of what's nice about the article we're going to put in the comments today is, it says here, and I think it's very smart, always ask owners questions that are specific to your stay at the beach. Like, Are there beach chairs? Is there a beach umbrella? Is there a place to store a bike? When is the check-in and check-out? Do you allow dogs? Do you have towels? Do you have sheets? As I'm reading this, I'm going, these are all the, when you go to a hotel, the answer to all these questions. But the minute you start getting into individuals interacting, I'll give you an example. Years ago, we rented a share in Amagansett, and there was a whole dance about getting something to put in the car. The beaches were essentially only for residents, not renters. So you had to kind of borrow the owner's pass and put it in your windshield, and then kind of pretend you lived there. There was a whole dance around it. But as I was reading the WTOP article, it was like, where do renters park? Does anyone else have access to the keys security code? Is there a baby crib? Is there Wi-Fi? These are I was reading this going, some of it is obviously on the site, some of it is answered, and some of it's really good to ask as many questions as you can.
So let me ask you a question. Is the instinct or the leading point you're making that maybe that level of specialization makes them a better choice than an Airbnb from both sides?
I think so. And I also think, if you're 20 years old and you're going to have a bunch of friends out and have a wild, crazy party house, there are certainly renters that, owners that are okay with that, and others that are way not okay with that. And so, are you renting a party house, or are you renting a family, have you left all of your personal items around the house and you really don't want it trashed?
Right. Well, my feeling from using Airbnb a lot in the last few years is that that's a false distinction because of the level of detail and kind of OCD that they've sort of put into the system means that like they already have that kind of level of almost de facto checks and balances. If you're staying in an urban place, if you're staying in a foreign country, if the world, it's not so formal that they have it chunked up in that way. And if there's a big enough market, I would guess they would roll with it. But I'm still a little skeptical. Well, let's edge into the hotel part of this because I think it cuts into it because it's who in this giant ecosystem is playing in this very, very mass retail level part of it.
So there's a really good article on Skift, and Skift is a pretty, we'll talk about Skift another day. Yeah. It's a pretty impressive startup in its own right, covering the hotel and travel industry. But basically what they're saying it's not just Airbnb, that HomeAway is starting to add hotels as well. So everybody's chewing on each other's leg, and then I guess part of it is you get permission as a renter of either a vacation home or a hotel room to have very specific needs about what you want and about what your family likes and about how close to the beach you are and whether or not you have to bring your own stuff. And in the case of hotel rooms, do you want a corporate kind of stuffy but high-end hotel, or do you want something more family oriented and a little bit more unique?
And one of the articles that is also in this mix refers to why I think it was at Marriott, why it's taken them so long to get into this giant, vacation side of the market, which is a broader question about their getting into the Airbnb world. And let me just say this really kind of succinctly if I can, because Jupiter used to do some of the pioneering travel conferences. And from the beginning, there was a set of kind of conflated issues that were really difficult to manage. One is you had this established, bizarre, anachronistic middleman of the travel agent, right? And to this day, a lot of that persists. And I'm going to hedge my criticism on that because that's my second point, which is that we want a concierge experience when we do these things, and which kind of leads to the third point, that the travel marketplace is so fractured. Booking your hotel and your airfare and your car is one thing, but boy, what you want to do every day and how you schedule your time and everything else is a big deal too. So when it comes down to that home, which is our rental, which is the point of this particular one, I think that a more generic competitor to Airbnb should emerge at some point, or could emerge, rather than something that's niche or vertical, kind of in the way that a lot of other players have surprisingly, whoever thought that something could rise up next to Netflix other than the cable offerings, and I think there's a chance for a lot of that, but that's just a hunch.
All right, so listeners, here's what we want you to do. This is your assignment for the week. We want you to go on one of these sites, HomeAway or VRBO or one of them, and rent a beach house. Tell your family you got to do it. It's an assignment from your podcast friends, Gene and Steve. Then make notes about your experience and report back to us. And you can, and by the way, you can write the whole vacation off because we're telling you it's an assignment. It's not a vacation. It's actually a community reporter assignment. Does that work as a tax write-off, Gene? Because in that case, you and I could do the same thing.
Hey, we could do this. And look, a lot of these things are first world problems in the sense that, a lot of people don't have that luxury. But at some point, we should get into this a little more because the idea of trading houses with people, we're all connected to so many people that if something was in place, we're not even aware that someone would be willing to trade our Westchester place for a place in, outside of Rome for 3 weeks next summer. And, but let's talk about that another day because this is a big topic.
All right. So one little sidebar just to add to the vacation subject is that Google's calendar has added an out of office mode.
Right.
out of office. So, and I'm seeing a lot of people I'm getting pings that are telling me PTO, which I can't decide means that, does that mean personal time off or paid time off?
That's a really good, it's like our instinct is to think paid time off, but I think it's a terrible acronym. And look, this is a collision of the pressure that all the tech companies are now under to sort of be leaders instead of followers, and the quality of life, and maybe you should turn it off every once in a while. That world is kind of colliding with the legacy world of Microsoft Outlook, which used to put the little sort of thing, I'm not here anymore, which we used to think was like what a newbie would do, because there's so many other ways of doing it than to sort of give somebody the impression that your email wasn't going to get answered. But
I'm sorry. What exactly? I've never heard of that. What is it? Microsoft
like
Outlook?
Change your email.
I'm kidding.
Yeah. Talk to the hand. That's what they used to do. But look, that stuff's going to be interesting to track in the next few years. Google Calendar, I think, is actually a mess. So that's another topic.
All right. So let's get into Go90, because Go90 is way dead, and I think it actually matters. Maybe even more than is obvious. So I want to start by telling a story. Yeah. So you won't remember this, but Go90, when it launched, had a thing where if you downloaded their app, they gave you, I don't remember what it was, 5 gigabytes or 12 terabytes or some number of storage for free. There was like on Verizon, you got a bunch of storage if you downloaded the app. And so I was giving a talk, I guess this is maybe 2 years ago, at Montclair State University, Merrill Brown's class, and I said in a room full of students, how many of you have watched Go90? And literally 0 hands went up.
Yeah.
And I said, well, they've got this new thing where you get 5 gigabytes free, and everyone in the room said, I'm going to do that. And I somehow or another, I looped back a couple of weeks later. They'd all downloaded it. They'd all gotten their free 5 gigabytes, and nobody had watched anything on it. They spent, by some reports, $250 million.
I find that preposterous, but I guess not surprising. I don't understand how they could have spent that much, since what they never did was make anyone even aware of it, right? Was it an infrastructure play or that where they made the investments? Because
it was in content.
Yeah, and I know the famous story is the only thing that anybody's even remotely heard was Kobe Bryant's little Oscar-winning short or documentary, and everything else fell way under the radar.
So there's a reason why I think this matters to our listeners. We're at a moment in time when there is a fire hose of money going to content, and basically everyone's saying, "Look, Hollywood. We're going to throw money at this problem. We're not going to let Netflix be the only winner. We're going to throw money at Amazon. We're going to throw money at it." And Go90 should be like the code word for not so fast, because money is not, Verizon is still a telephone company, much as they may want to believe that they've become something else, and they're in the midst of trying to become something else.
Well, and
but
look, go on.
But Go90's failure should be like a siren, like a canary in a coal mine for what happens when you give a telephone company, they take your money because you're the one giving them the money to spend, right? It's like your phone bill, and they want to we'll just do the content thing.
Well, and this is thus directly related to a story from a few weeks ago where we talked about the leadership, and in particular Tim Armstrong at Verizon, which, just to refresh, historical Google guy, became CEO of AOL, found its home in Verizon through advertising and content and ad networks and distribution and a hodgepodge of properties, then became the guy running Oath. We can talk about that too, which is like AOL, Tumblr, and Yahoo all underneath that roof at Verizon. And now he's the big guy. And I think this is one of his first orders of business, was to kill off that rotting plate of vegetables, because here's the thing. If ever there was a guy who might have a strategy that would combine not just video, but mobile, because he's a mobile first guy who's done very well in that world, and advertising, right? He almost, to a certain extent, has gained a reputation of being just give me any content, I can make a buck off of it because I know how to do the least common denominator advertising and make some money. But look, he's going to be aggressive and sophisticated.
But here I think is the difference. So I'm looking, as we're talking, I'm looking at the Verizon article on TechCrunch, and it's worth remembering that TechCrunch is owned by
That's right.
Oath, which is owned by Verizon. So here's to me the difference, and the one that I think is worth kind of underlining.
Yeah.
So when Michael Arrington launched TechCrunch, he made a lot of noise by being really aggressive. Some would say, a pain in the ass, but neither here nor there. The journalism on TechCrunch in its early days was groundbreaking in all kinds of ways. And he was a sharp elbow guy.
Yep.
Now he's gone and been gone for 200 million years, a long time. But TechCrunch still has some of that early and it's not, TechCrunch is not a must-read in the way it used to be, but it's still, the brand is imbued with some historic internal DNA that maybe will wear off over time, but maybe won't.
Yeah.
That to me, that's the difference between Verizon AOL buying TechCrunch and Verizon AOL Oath saying we'll just do Go 90. By the way, do you know why it's called Go 90?
Playhouse 90? I have no idea.
No, because they wanted you to take your phone and go 90.
Oh, that's hysterical. All right, so then that's by itself, based on our IGTV discussion last week, something that we know should be obsolete. Because I know Tim would never have believed in anything like that.
Well, and the name, and look, you can hear the conference rooms where, well, Google didn't really mean anything, and Yahoo didn't really mean anything. We'll just call it Go 90. We got to be able to clear it. We got to be able to own it, and we got to be able to clear it.
And look, let's be. I want to make myself be crisp on this in the sense that to just say video is to say whatever the hell you want under the face of the earth. The question is, are you going to package together a Netflix, Hulu, Prime competitor? Are you going to invest in content, big mainstream content, or are you going to do something else? What Tim Armstrong has done in the last 5 years is manage the complexity of a lot of small and medium-sized assets reasonably well, I guess, because we didn't hear as many horror stories, although now that he has Yahoo, there's still so many legacy things in there. And so I think the question has a lot to do with that. And, we'll see, because really when it comes to Verizon, what I care about is why my FiOS sucks half the time.
but I also think it's worth remembering how creative people are motivated. So I'll give you an example. If I said, hey, Gene, I want you to come give a keynote at this great big event in New York on the future of media, and I'm going to pay you $10,000, $15,000. Would you do a keynote for me? $20,000. Some a big chunk of money.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Especially if if I wasn't traveling, like the topic. Yeah.
All right. I'll tell you what. Instead of that, I want to pay you $25,000. And I want you to come do a keynote at my conference, but by the way, no one's going to attend.
Right.
So you'll take the money, but how hard are you going to work on the PowerPoint when you know the room is empty?
Right.
So the problem that Verizon had with Go 90 was they kept going to talent and offering them a little too much money to make content for an empty room, and they just got everybody's just phone it in. Yeah, we'll take your phone company money, but at the end of the day, if you want our kick-ass A-list stuff, you better deliver us an audience.
Yeah, and I think it's right, and some of it's structural and business model in the sense that, which is related to that, which is, are you a production company? Are you investing in content, but you're agnostic to where it goes and how it makes money other than you getting paid? Or are you really trying to shoehorn it into your strategy or exclusivity or whatever else? I know that's kind of what you were just saying, but I think that sometimes it's a very simple thing, and we discussed this last week. If you're just passing 1 billion regular monthly uniques, Instagram, I won't begrudge them the exclusivity of their video and their formats.
Yeah, and by the way, we'll see how long we stick with it, but we're going to try and publish a version of this video podcast on Instagram TV. We'll have more. All right. So last but not least, let's get to this question of the tech companies arriving with their checkbooks, fully engorged, in Hollywood. What do you make of that? Like,
well, okay, the topic that people would tend to think is the story has been about what we just talked about. Are they investing in video? Are they doing whatever? Right now, we're talking a little more about really bringing their technology to bear, either in an enterprise way, because if Universal's got so much going on in so many different directions, their cloud relationship is going to be a big deal and $100 million contract or something for someone. So that's one way to sort of think about this. But it's wrapped into what these platforms are technologically. And so I think that there's just a sense, without knowing precisely what it's going to be, that we have to own this, right? And I think in some ways the legacies that are out there are, too little private companies shouldn't become Box or Dropbox under our noses versus Amazon, the likes of Amazon shouldn't run away with the server business accidentally through, AWS, right? These are kinds of the backdrop of this.
So I remember.
It's hard to say that if people don't know what that means, but there's a lot going on there.
At the end of the day, Hollywood, if you go back through the history of Hollywood, there has always been a trail of dumb money wandering into town, wanting to buy their way into snazzy parties with glamorous people and willing to, get their daughter a bit part in a whatever or son. I think net, the idea that both Microsoft and Google think that they're gonna, get top Hollywood talent, they'll take their money, but it's
hard to know what they mean that they're going to get from that. The idea of there are now so many creators out there that they should be mindful that Azure is out there or Google or whatever, and but are they talking about that, or are they talking about Martin Scorsese's production unit for big budget movies? Hollywood knows how to spend big money in bunches, but they don't really manage anything. The history of this, going back when you and I have talked about this before in our own lives in the digital world, they don't spend that money in a way. I don't really even understand what the there is, other than we're an investment partner and a technology partner for you, or we'll bankroll your content.
So I'll only say this: I shifted plans on AT&T this week, and they insisted there was no way I could make a change to any plan and not end up with either HBO or Dish Network included. There was no way to opt out of either of them.
That's amazing. Well, look, I know we're wrapping it up here. We should look, since we take video and media in so many different ways at some point, at what the reality of these packages are that people are offering. Because I had a 40-something person, much older than I would have thought, tell me his strategy for unplugging an OTT the other day. That was pretty fascinating.
But by the way, remember here's a phrase that will take us on a little time machine: triple play.
Oh yeah, exactly.
The triple play.
Funny. Yeah,
I'm going to be jammed with a triple play. All right, well, we are out of time. So everyone, enjoy your beach house. The good thing about podcasts is that you can listen to them on the beach. So just because we promise, we know it's summer, so we're gonna talk about corn and lobster rolls and all that good stuff. And,
right, easy entertainment. But let's also just sort of, as things are expanding generally, you can catch us on Facebook. We're starting to tweet out access to this stuff. You can watch them as YouTube videos and subscribe there, which we hope. Apple Podcasts, and now we're on Instagram, IGTV, or just through the Instagram app. So find us, love us, share us.
Indeed. And we'll see you next week. Bye, Gene.
Bye, Steve.